What's up, witches? Oh, there's 6 of you. We in here. Witches are up tonight. What y'all doing up? I was like, because of the time, there's gonna be like 2 people here. What's up, guys? How we doing? What's up, witches? What's up? What's up? What's up? Oh, so many. Hey, hey, hey. Yes, June was first. Hi, guys. Yes, so many people from who was in the Witches of Color meeting that we had, which was phenomenal. Oh my goodness, Alexis is here. What? Oh my goodness. Hi, Alexis. So glad to have you here. Hey, Nuri. Yes. What's up, everybody? How we doing? Yes, we're talking ghosts. We're talking dead people. We're talking about the dead tonight. I'm excited for this conversation. This has been a very special part of my practice and my journey, learning my connection to crossroads spirits, which are not spirits of the dead, but are the gatekeepers between the world of the dead and our world. Some of them stand guard, some of them escort back and forth. And it's become clear to me that many crossroads spirits, that I have a connection to them. And working with them is a part of my calling and a part of my purpose. And so that has me navigating into learning more about the difference between the living world and the world of the dead, and what that means, and how those worlds, those 2 worlds, are different from even other worlds, like the angelic worlds, the demonic worlds, the world in which our guides exist, the world in which elementals exist, etc. So these are all, when people talk about like the veil and things like this idea that these are different existences, for me, they're not sort of on different planes so much as they're all happening at the same time, right? Like there are angels around us, there are ancestors around us, there are beings that have never been dead, there are dead beings, like there's all of this stuff happening, but we're not necessarily on the same frequency. Kind of like radio, like a radio waves, where it's like, hey, Ahmad, welcome. Where it's like, yes, good. This is good bedtime listening for sure. Hopefully it is not spooky. But these worlds are all happening, all at the same time. And the world of the dead is one that I think is important for us to understand, even if we don't ever interact with it, because as witches, we are connected to and are sensitive to all of the different vibrations that are around us, all of the different channels that the radio can possibly pick up. The more that we know, the more that we understand, the more effective we are at connecting with those different stations and turning the dial, changing it, Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like the best analogy for it. That all of the different types of vibrations that are out there, the types of energy that are out there, and we're one of them, are all different potential stations, different, what do you call it? Like the different settings on the radio, and they're all sending out radio waves. They're all a radio wave. They're all a type of energy. But you have to dial in to that particular one with your radio in order to pick up on it. And we're going to talk about how to dial into the station of the dead. So this is specifically the spirits that were once human beings, or not necessarily human beings, humans or animals living life on this planet and that no longer have a body. So that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit tonight. I encourage you all to share your thoughts and your experiences with working with spirits of the dead. I'll share mine and my thoughts and take any questions that you guys have. And I also want to share with you a couple of useful books, prayers, guides. I have a couple prayers I want to share with you guys, and I will actually type these out and post them in the Coven feed. So if you want to use them yourselves, I'm going to put them in the spells section. They're not exactly spells per se, but I'm going to put them in the spells section. So if you are interested in these prayers, you can have them written down for you. Yes, the graveyard shift. That's exactly what this is. I was thinking about having it on another day because, oftentimes high tea is at 10 o'clock. But we had Witches of Color support group tonight at 10 o'clock. But I like to try to do these. I try to do them before the full moon. I think next month that's not going to be possible. But I wanted to do it before the full moon. And I was like, is midnight too late? And then I was like, no, we're talking about the dead. Let's do it at midnight. That's perfect. So this is high tea. No pressure to be getting high. But if you are, what are you getting high on? And no pressure to be drinking tea. But if you are drinking tea, what are you drinking? Drop it down in the comments. What herbs are we enjoying? I am burning rosemary as always. I keep rosemary by my bed and I burn a little every night to help me with my memory, help me remember my dreams, because that's a struggle for me a little bit. So I need the assistance of my grandmother Rosemary to do that. I am sipping on some Skinny Spice, which is one of my teas, my tea creations, which we sell at HQ. Because this witch is feeling a little gluttonous after my LA trip. I was eating everything under the sun. All of my dietary restrictions went out the window. It was like Shake Shack every day and like whatever food we could find. Because LA is like New York. It's a mix of ethnic backgrounds, so it's a lot of different food. So we were just eating, basically donuts, mochi nuts, like all kinds of nonsense. So I came back feeling a little porky. So we're sipping on the Skinny Spice. Skinny Spice is my weight loss and weight management tea made with wonderful metabolism boosting herbs and fat busting ingredients like cardamom pods and grapefruit peels. And the active ingredient in it is a plant called senna leaf. And if you're wondering if it will send you to the bathroom, yes, it will. Yes, it will. You're actually not supposed to drink senna for more than like 2 weeks in a row. So, because it can get a little crazy. So, but I'm sipping on some Skinny Spice and I am going to enjoy the last of these puff herbals, which we also carry in the shop. They're hemp flower, CBD hemp flower spliffs or pre-rolls here. And yeah, that's about it. I think this is going to be my last one of these. And then I'm going to switch over to one of my blends, my first blend called Liftoff. Because it's my favorite. I just wanted to try these because we were selling them in the shop. And I like to try everything that we carry in the shop so that I can, decide if I like it, if I want to keep carrying it for you guys, all of that good stuff. And now that I have partaken, I love Puff Herbals. I really like their blends. But I'm partial to my own. So I'm going to go back to my Liftoff. And I will have to say, I do not like their box. It's so hard to open. There's like a plastic tab on the back. I don't know. I think I do it wrong. There's a plastic tab on the back that I think is to keep it from opening. Like unwillingly, but then I can't get it open myself. It's always hard. Here we go. Ooh, you're gonna pack a bowl of a strain called Cake Face. Sounds like you're gonna get smacked. One of my an old former coworker that I am reconnecting with came over a couple weeks ago and left me some edible candy, like some gummies. So I might. Oh, I think that was the problem. I might partake of that this evening as well, but I am not going to have that now because I will literally tip over in the middle of this conversation and we won't talk about the dead. I will just appear to be dead. So we don't need that. Yes, Alexis, get in on the skinny spice, girl. We got to listen. I'm trying to have a hot witch summer. Okay, this witch, for those of you who don't know, I'm going through a divorce. Okay, and papers have been filed and things of this nature. And I don't know when it will all be finalized, but I assume sometime before the summer. And I'm trying to be outside. Okay, I'm going to keep it real with y'all. I'm trying to be outside, trying to have a hot witch summer. Okay, so we need the skinny spice to get me ready. Okay. It is hard to open, right? June's got some mochi. Takara's burning aphrodisia and drinking woke up like this. Yes, I love it. Enjoy. It is hard to open, right? Alexis is smoking on some Northern Lights. Yum. Period. Yes, I feel you, Ahmad. Yeah. Let me tell you something. I really needed to rest after my LA trip. So I was really grateful that my friend had brought that over and left me some. When I tell you, I was like Sunday night after I closed the shop, he gave it to me on Saturday night, but I was like, no, not going to do that. Gonna go to the shop. It's just me in the shop today. I need to be, present. So that's what I did. And then I was like, but Sunday night is like my Friday night because we're closed on Mondays and Tuesdays. And Monday is my me day. Monday is my moon day. I don't make any plans. I don't leave the house. I don't change out of my pajamas. It's just, I water the plants. I order my Instacart groceries. I do a little light cleaning. I just detach and relax and reset myself. Monday mornings, I'm with my ancestors. It's when I reset my altars for them. It's just a reset day for me, myself, and I. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. So I'm going to have a little piece of this gummy and then I'll get up Monday and do my normal stuff. When I tell you Monday was a dub for me, I don't know what the dosage is of this gummy. I took a little piece of the rope that he left me. Child. It was a wrap. I think I got up at 5 p.m. on Monday and was like, what day is it? And I was out. Okay. I was out. It is, right? It's early. No one should ever work on Mondays, right? Like, and I don't poo poo any of the days, they're all wonderful. But Monday feels like a reset day to me. But yes. Okay, good. Everybody is enjoying some herbals. That is wonderful. I'm very happy to hear that. Make sure the music's not too loud. I think it's copyright free. At least that's what the name of this track says. So hopefully it's not a problem when I post this on YouTube. But we are not on YouTube presently, or at least we shouldn't be accessible because this is a Coven Witch exclusive. I've gotten much better. I think I got the word out. Everybody knows that in order to be a part of the live stream for High Teas, you've got to be in the Coven community. And I will then share portions of this conversation and stuff like that on my YouTube for educational purposes. But if you want to be in the room, then you got to join the Coven. Links in the descriptions for how to join and all of that good stuff. Okay. So, spirits of the dead. What are they? Shall we start there? Yeah. Back in the day when I was young, every witchy shop was closed on Mondays. So when I opened up HQ, I kind of did it just out of like what I imagine to be like a tradition, but it also just kind of makes sense for retail spots. Um, there's just very little traffic usually on Mondays. You know, everybody turned up on the weekend, spent their check, and now they got to get back to work. Yeah, I don't know if it's like a magical spiritual thing or if it's just like the reality of retail. Um, and obviously these are the witchy shops here in New York, so maybe in other places is different, but working in hospitality for all those many years, it was similar with hospitality too. Monday is just the day everybody has spent their paychecks. They spent way more over the weekend than they planned. Now they got to get back to work. They got to catch up on stuff. If they're going to have a long day out of the week, it might be Monday. So, shopping in the afternoon, spending more money, stuff like that, they're just like not inclined to do. So, hmm, I love that. That's so cool. Pipes are so distinguished as well. Um, and how appropriate for tonight. Yes, they absolutely do that. And when it comes to the spirits of ancestors specifically, for those of you who don't know, I'm teaching a class called Orphan Ancestry on May 1st. I am an adopted witch, and so that journey has been interesting for me. And I've learned a lot about how to build an ancestral practice, regardless of how much about your family you know. So it's probably one of the there's two things I hear from witches that don't have an ancestral practice about like why they haven't connected with their ancestors. It's either I don't really know anything about them and there's no way for me to get information about them, or I do like them or I do know them, but I don't like them, which happens a lot with my white witches. And I can understand. It's a lot of like, I know who my ancestors are and fuck them. And why would I want to have a relationship with them? And then I have to explain that you have to address things in order to fix it and blah, blah, blah. But I'll be talking very much about how to build relationships with ancestor spirits in that class. Today, we'll talk like just generally about connecting with the dead, things that you can do, and important things to consider and to know about the dead. So, as I was saying at the start, the spirits of the dead, and when I say that, I refer to the spirits that once inhabited bodies on this earth. So, people, but also animals. Um, and there is a uniqueness about the spirits that have once inhabited bodies on this earth that is a little bit different from the spirits or the vibrations of energy that have never inhabited bodies on this earth. And there are different roles that they serve in our lives. We can connect with them in different ways. And obviously, one of the big distinctions between spirits that have never been on this earth and spirits that have is that we have things called graveyards and cemeteries, memorials, shrines, urns, etc. But unlike an angel or something like that, where there's probably not going to be any physical evidence of them in this world, the spirits of the dead, there's evidence and there's places in this world that we can connect with them. There are physical objects that they may have used or that represent them and things like that. So we have a different way of connecting with them because we have like physical places and physical things that further connect us to them. And we don't necessarily have that for other types of energy beings. So that's something unique about them for sure. I like this mix. I hope it is truly non-copyright because it's basically like hits but redone. I guess covers. But so I hope YouTube doesn't pick think that it's the originals and shut me down. But um so spirits of the dead. Um I think we'll start with the why, because I always like to start with the why, or at least I like to make sure that we touch on the why. You know, I'm a why witch. I do not believe in doing things just because. I think you have to ask yourself the question and constantly be asking yourself the question, why? Why am I doing this? If there is no result in your life, if there's no impact on your life, if it doesn't change something for you, if it doesn't help you to accomplish something, don't do it. Let's not be the type of witches that pick up books and watch videos and do things. You know, if the only reason why you're doing something is because some other witch said do it, stop doing it. You need more than that. Um, so, why might a witch want to connect with the spirits of beings that once lived on this earth? So, there are a couple of reasons for me um, that I think apply generally. When it comes to spirits that used to inhabit bodies on this earth, because they are connected to this earth plane in a very direct way, the way it feels like for me is it's easier for them to manipulate things in our world because they were once here. So it's almost like if you imagine, you know, if you grew up in a building, like grew up in a house, and you leave it, and 20 years later you have the opportunity to go back, even though the house is different, the furniture has been moved, the walls have been painted, things have been changed, you are going to have a sense of familiarity with that space. And there are going to be things that you know about that space that even the people who are living in it today don't know about it. And so that's how I feel about working with the spirits of the dead and why I do it. They have been here on this earth and they are connected to it in a way where they can navigate around it um, just as good, or in some cases, even better than I can, because there are things about it that they know that I don't, that they experience that I didn't. They might know about that little cabinet behind the closet door that nobody knew about um, because they've actually been here, as opposed to another energy that isn't really of this space. And so they can help me with my personal development, with my spiritual path, with skills I want to learn, or things I want to grow into, but they don't necessarily understand the nooks and crannies of the world that I live in. But someone who was here has that level of understanding. There's a connection to the human experience that they have, where I feel like the spirits of the dead can really help with very um, worldly, earthly things, finding things. Um, 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 Moving things, interfering or helping with interpersonal relationships with things. Um, so there are many different types of energy beings that you can reach out to, that you could want to work with: angels, guides, demons, elementals. But they all seem to have kind of like their areas of expertise. And I feel like the spirits of the dead are particularly good at manipulating things in the physical world. I think that's also why we experience paranormal activity. When something moves in your house or rattles in the night or what have you, it seems to almost always be the spirit of a being that was once on this earth. You know, if like a cup goes flying across your apartment, it's usually not like, Archangel Michael or something, it's like the old lady that used to live in the house that doesn't like your cup. So we experience, my theory, or what it feels like for me, is we experience paranormal activity because the connection to the earthly world is still so strong. amongst the spirit of the dead because they were once here. And that can be creepy, and that can be scary, and that can be problematic when you have a situation where a spirit that was once in a body has not accepted that it is no longer in a body and that it's not actually of this world anymore, and perhaps needs to transition on into its next chapter. So there can be problems that come from that, but there can also be lots of benefit where if you want very physical earthly things to happen and you need assistance to do that, it is going to be the spirits of the dead that for me have been the most helpful and the most capable of actually doing stuff like that. Can you imagine? Archangel Michael was just like, fuck your cup. I know. No, they'd be like, they'd be like in the ethereal, helping you and like protecting you spiritually and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's going to be that like drunk uncle that would be like, fuck this cup, which is like not helpful. But like if your uncle is like more high vibrational in a better place, it could be helpful that he can move cups. Angels are not caring about your cutlery. They do not. They do not care about your cutlery. They are busy literally helping the entire world connect with the divine. They have bigger fish to fry. You know what I'm saying? But that one drunk uncle, he's with the shits. So if you need some shit to go down, that's the guy to call. So a lot of times witches, I think, and particularly new witches, get really caught up in the idea of like connecting with deities. It's like deities, 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 right? That's what all the literature is going to be about and what everybody's all into, what deities to work with, what deities to work with. Honestly, F the deities. What do you need a deity? You have capital G God, the energy of the universe, the all and the nothing, source creator. And then you have spirits that can like do shit for you. Like you think Lord Shiva is coming down to like make sure you pay that light bill? I am sorry to tell you, he is not. Okay. You know what I mean? But grandmama probably absolutely does not want to see you in the dark. So the spirits of the dead are very useful for our real world concerns. And as witches, we are real world agents. We can be as spiritual as we want to be, but for me, the purpose of learning witchcraft is not for some like woo woo, sort of like kumbaya with the world type of a thing. I am a witch because it gets me the shit I want. It gets things done for me. It allows me to have the life I want to have. Um, and yes, it gives me a lot of fulfillment and spiritual enrichment, and I think makes me a better person and all of that good stuff. But that's not why I do it. I do it because it's effective. So that's the why. Of why connecting with spirits of the dead is useful for a witch when you want to make things happen on a physical plane and you need assistance because maybe you want to manipulate something that you don't have direct physical control over. Spirit can go where you can't go. It can see things you can't see and might be able to access and manipulate things that you can't with your, physical fingers and toes. So they are very helpful in that way. This is one of the reasons why really well-known or powerful magicians and conjurers actually intentionally get buried in unmarked graves because they know that if they were competent conjurers, competent magicians, competent healers when they were alive, that people are not necessarily going to stop coming to them just because their bodies have died, right? Because people understand that the spirit lives on and those spirits will get petitioned. And so it has been quite common in a lot of different traditions for the healers, the mystics, the witches of certain communities, once they die, to get buried in unmarked or unknown places so that they can be left the F alone. That's actually, I believe, what happened with Black Herman, who we are venerating. He was one of the best known magicians of his time. and conjurman of his time. And he's buried, and he died with plenty of money, but for whatever reason is buried in an unmarked grave. And I do believe that was intentional. And so I'm excited because he's given us the okay to change that, and has basically said he's ready to step back into a role of service. But yeah, don't think that when your body dies, people can't still call on you for shit. So if you don't want to be bothered, keep that in mind. Okay. Yeah. Well, because what you have to understand, or well, I think you do because you just made this statement, but for folks who may not understand the difference, a deity is just a personification of all of the source of God. A group of people in a culture came together and said, how do we describe this thing that is bigger than our puny little human brains can even understand? Let's give it a name. Let's give it some attributes. In some cultures, what in most cultures before Christianity, what they experienced from the all was so multifaceted, so multidimensional that one being couldn't contain all of its characteristics. So they created many, and they gave them many names. And because of the super simplification of this concept and of language caused by Europe and the West, everything got lumped under this God title. But there's a difference between the all and the many, 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 many deities that have been created to try to describe the all. So I don't think there's anything wrong with connecting with deities. I have in my personal practice for reasons, but know that when you're connecting with a deity, you're talking about a personification of a certain aspect of the bigger picture. And so it may not really be super necessary to do that. Just work with the bigger picture and understand how all of these different vibrations of the all can be communicated with and what they're useful for. Okay. And because I'm all about results in my life, like deities don't serve a huge purpose because, like I said, you know, Zeus is not going to get my light bill paid. He might help me just develop my personal power, and connecting with him and using him as a role model and learning about his mythos might make me a stronger, better person as an individual. But also, I need that light bill paid. So, I need to talk to beings that are more on that vibration. So, yeah, that's why we connect to spirits of the dead. I encourage you all to share your stories for those of you who have already experienced some type of communication or interaction with spirits of the dead, because we're from all different backgrounds, all different experiences. For some people, having experiences with hauntings, having experiences with spirits of the dead is what brings them into spirituality and witchcraft in the first place, because they start asking questions that religion sometimes can't answer about, why do I keep seeing grandpa in the hallway when he died 10 years ago? What is that about? Um, and Christianity can be super useless on this point because they just call everything a demon. So they're useless. You're like, can you help me? I keep seeing this lady in my apartment and she appears to be dead. And they're like, ding ding. And you're like, that doesn't help. That doesn't help. Tell me what to do about the lady in my hallway. What does she want? So they're kind of useless in this regard because just everything is a demon. So, but yeah, for if you guys have had experiences with the dead, share any ghost stories. Mm, that is super interesting. That's very interesting. And you're smoking his pipe and all of that. I love that. Very with us tonight. Tell me about it, right? And it's just like the demons are over here, it's not us. We're here, but you realize 90% of the time it's not us. Y'all got other shit going on. It's not always us. Oh, yeah. Either you shrugged it off, or more likely the adults in your life were like, That's not real. You're just imagining things. It's just the boogie monster. And you're like, you mean to tell me I don't see that lady? That lady's not there. And then after a while, you just have to pretend like that lady's not there because everybody keeps insisting. Right? Yes. If I were a demon, I would definitely be like, why is my, like, what did Will Smith say? Keep my wife's name out of your mouth. I'd be like, can y'all stop talking about me all the time? Like, it's not me all the time. It's me some of the time. But most of the time, it's not me. Demons are always getting dragged into it by the Christians. And they're like, we're not even, first of all, y'all created us. But anyway, that's a whole other story. Right? But yeah. Oh my God, Nori, share. Yes. What are your ghost stories? I think those are often cool. While you guys share your ghost stories in the comments, let's see, we talked about why you would connect with the spirits of the dead, that the spirits of the dead are beings that were here on this earth plane at some point in some physical capacity, some form. They now no longer have a body and have returned to being just energy. But because they once had a body, they are particularly good at interacting with the world, which is why some folks who are magical, skilled, etc., will intentionally bury themselves in unmarked graves so as not to be bothered. So I guess the next thing to talk about is how do we bother them? What is that all about? Why would you bury yourself in an unmarked grave? What does your grave have to do with it? So because we're talking about energy and we're talking about impressions with the physical world, the understanding of spiritualists, folks who work with spirits of the dead, is that you can access a being by interacting with the things that were connected to that being. Its clothing, its jewelry, where it lived, and where it was laid to rest. Think about how infused with the energy of a person the dirt around their dead body is. It's very similar to like your bed, right? Your bed is probably, no matter how amazingly clean your sheets are, it is probably just a cesspool of elements of you, actual scent molecules, cells, and energy. And the same is the case for your final bed, your final resting place. Your body sits there indefinitely, and the soil around it just becomes further and further saturated with your energy. And so, if I don't have a piece of jewelry of yours, a lock of your hair, clothing that you wore, or something like that, the next best thing would be to go and get some dirt from your grave. And so, for those of us who want to connect with spirits of the dead, that is an effective way it has turned out to connect with somebody. Though you can do it through the other things that I mentioned, other personal effects, other belongings, basically anything that would have spent time with the person long enough to pick up an energetic impression is something that you can use to connect to the spirit of someone who is no longer with us. Okay, let's read your story. The first, I didn't see a ghost, but I heard someone. I was like 10, 11 and sleeping with a Mickey Mouse stuffed animal. Okay. I heard the shrillest horror movie type scream in my ear that was so loud it woke me up. I ran to my mom crying, and she was convinced it was the Mickey Mouse toy and had me get rid of it the next day. I'm sorry, Mickey. Somebody once got me for Christmas a Steve Urkel doll. And if you guys are of an age where you are old enough to know who Steve Urkel is, not a cuddly character. It was like a full standing Steve Urkel with a pull in the back that would say, "Did I do that?" And like, and like do the snort laugh or whatever. And it had the big glasses, and it would just, I thought it was cute when I got it. And I was like, oh my God, Steve Urkel, how great. And then I took it to bed with me. When I tell you, I put that shit under layers of clothes in the guest bedroom closet, and like left it there for years because it was just sitting there in the dark in its big red glasses. And I was just waiting for it to talk without me pulling the string in the back. And I was like, if that happens, I'm going to pee on myself. So I'm just going to get rid of this. And yeah, I hid it under like the guest bedroom linen closet and didn't find it again for years. Okay, second was I went to the bathroom late at night, came back to my room. I swear I see a girl in the corner of my room. I turned the light on and it was gone. This happened at the same age, 10, 11. I had dolls that went off. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. I was afraid that I'm going to, 3 o'clock in the morning, all of a sudden I'm going to hear, did I do that? And then I was going to have to burn down my family's home. So I was like, let's not get to that point. Let me just do something. But I couldn't throw it out. It was a gift. And I couldn't explain it to my mother because she would have been like, you're being ridiculous. So I just hid it. Yes. It was giving Black Chucky doll because it was also like this big, it was like taller than a Barbie. It wasn't like a little figure or whatever. It was like a sizable doll. And it was cute during the day. And at night, I was like, oh, this was a mistake. I should not have brought this to bed with me. Not cute. Not cute. Okay. Mediums. I want to talk about mediums as well because I think that's important. Tea could be hotter. Okay. So mediums. No apologies, my dear. No. There's other ways as well. For sure. That's a great question. Heather asks, if you don't have anything of the deceased person's belongings and no access to a gravesite, does that mean that you can't get in touch with them? No. They exist in the energetic realms and therefore are potentially accessible. I have heard people kind of go back and forth on the idea of reincarnation and what happens when a spirit reincarnates and whether or not they are still accessible and stuff like that. But generally speaking, if they haven't reincarnated, if they haven't in some way, I don't know, become unavailable, they are still available to us. It's just that the use of personal effects allows us to dial in more accurately. You weren't here earlier, but we were using like the radio station analogy. And when you have a personal effect, it allows you to dial in quicker and more accurately to the person that you want. You can still use other things like divination tools, spirit boards, etc., to call forward spirit. But then you just have like a little bit more work to do to validate and confirm that you are calling forward the energy that you want to speak with. There are things that you can do to try to be clear about what spirit you are willing to connect with and who you're trying to call forward, and then things you can do to validate that you are in fact talking to that person, and then you go from there. So it's totally possible. It's just like, think of like knowing somebody's phone number versus having to go to the yellow pages and look for them. If you have a personal effect, then you already know their number. And now it's just a matter of using that to establish connection and being still, being perceptive, being sensitive, being able to feel the shift in your space when that energy is present, things like that. Whereas if you don't have anything of a personal effect, then you're kind of being like, going to spirit being like, okay, let's see, Bob Miller. Okay, is this the Bob Miller that I seek? Let me ask you some questions. Validate that you're the one. You call out Bob Miller, you might get like 10 Bob Millers. And then you got to make sure that you know how to reject the 9 Bob Millers that you're not trying to talk to and validate that you're speaking to the one you do want to speak to. Yeah, this is the something that I've heard mediums talk about, and this is going to lead me into also talking to you guys about mediumship and what that means. Uh, People that I know that are mediums have said the same thing, where they're able to tell that a spirit has reincarnated into a new body, but there is still a energetic impression of the person left behind that they are able to connect to. It is just not quite as vibrant as when they haven't reincarnated. Almost like, if somebody was wearing a very heavy perfume and then they left the room, you would still be able to smell them, but perhaps not the same way as if they were in the room. Okay. So I have a similar viewpoint. For sure. For sure. Heather says, I always felt as if the person is not in the grave, but in the spirit world, and I don't have to visit the site, but now my thinking and understanding is broadening. Yeah. So they're not, I guess it kind of depends on what you mean by the person, right? The body is definitely there, and we are using the physical, energetic impression of the body to help us to connect to the spirit. But the spirit is definitely not in the grave and not even at the graveyard. The idea that graveyards are these like super haunted places is very much the stuff of TVs and movies. I spent quite a bit of time in the graveyard, and it is some of the least spiritually active places I've ever been. Very quiet, very peaceful. When we go to a graveyard and we feel the spirit of our deceased loved one or whoever we're connecting with, it's because they're there because we're there. They show up because we show up. Um, they're not just sitting there like waiting for you to come to them. They are a part of uh, the energetic world. So they are anywhere that energy is and can go anywhere that energy can go. um, we tend to call them forward when we are at their graves. And so it's like, you rang, here I am, kind of a thing. Yeah, like a meetup spot. That's a great way to put it. Literally, cemeteries are mad dead. I love cemeteries. I love graveyards. Do you guys know the difference between the two? A graveyard and a cemetery? Ooh, pop quiz. Who knows? And you can't look it up. Don't look it up. Who knows the difference between a graveyard and a cemetery? Who knows? Who knows? No Googling. If you don't know, don't worry. You're going to find out in a few seconds. But does anybody just off the top of their head know the difference between a graveyard and a cemetery? The amount of land? No, it is not the amount of land. You can have tiny cemeteries, huge ones. A graveyard is more personal church members. Okay, so yes, you are on to something there. Ahmad said a graveyard is usually more personal, family, and church members. The church members you're on to. A graveyard is attached to a church, whereas a cemetery is not. That's the distinction. Close, like you're close on both points, Ahmad. So a cemetery is not attached to a church, but it's not necessarily always public. There are privately owned cemeteries that might be just for families and things of that nature. But a graveyard is attached to a church, and a cemetery is not. I didn't know there was one either until I learned the difference. I was like, graveyard, cemetery, I don't know. But yeah, graveyards are attached to churches, cemeteries are not. Okay, but good guesses. Graveyard is only buried people. Oh, you mean like mausoleums and stuff? You can have a mausoleum in a graveyard. Hmm. Very good guesses. Yours were the closest, spot on. Like of the distinction. Claircognizant responses. Yes, I love that. So yeah, graveyards are attached to churches. Cemeteries are not. And mediums. I want to talk about mediums because it's important to understand that it is possible for all of us to hear or see either actual physical evidence of spirit activity, or to have clear experience with spirit activity, meaning all of us have the potential to see with our human eyeballs a mist, a shadow figure, an item move without anything touching it, things of that nature. We all have that possibility. We all have the possibility of hearing what are called disembodied voices or sounds, sounds that are actually happening. They could be picked up on a recorded device. They are sound vibrations that are physically happening in this world, but we don't see a source. There does not appear to be a source of it. We all have the possibility of having those experiences. We also all have the possibility of having the clear version of those experiences, meaning not seeing a mist or seeing a shadow, but feeling um, out of the corner of our eyes, or uh, that like behind our eyes, almost that something has shifted, that a room has suddenly gotten darker or lighter, a vision of a being. So that might have been what happened with you, Nuri. You might have seen with your actual eyeball somebody in your room, but you also might have seen it with your mind's eye, and clairaudience, which is hearing voices. And June and I were talking about this in the shop today, hearing voices or messages, but knowing quite clearly that no recording device would have picked it up, that there are no sound waves that can prove that something audible just happened, but you did in fact hear it. That would be like the scream that you described, Nuri, a clairaudient situation. If you had a recording device in your room, no scream would have been picked up, but you heard it clear as day. So we're all capable of having those things. That does not make us mediums. What makes one a medium is tied more deeply to your purpose, the reason why you've come to this earth in this physical container in the first place, and what I call your toolkit that you brought with you in order to serve your purpose and execute your mission. Mediums have come here with the tool of being able to serve as a mediator between the living and the dead. They are supposed to serve a role, and it might be a public role or it might be just for their family, friends, whatever. But they're, for whatever reason, equipped with a particular assignment to help the dead and the living better communicate with each other. Most of that is tied to having a purpose of bringing comfort and closure to the living. So we are not all mediums just because we can see dead people. It is a role that one is given, a purpose, an assignment that one is given here to serve as a mediator. In some ways, mediums are like the crossroads spirits of the living side. They kind of serve as a bridge between the two worlds. So their experiences with the dead are typically far more vivid and far more intense because they need to be able to understand and receive messages from the spirits of the dead much better than the average person, because they have to then go and translate it, right? So if you are going to be a translator at the UN, you can't be speaking Spanglish. You have to be fluent in Spanish, fluent in English in order to be a translator. So mediums are people who are fluent in the language of the living and fluent in the language of the dead. And so because of that, they're able to translate and send and communicate messages between the two. Okay. And I think that is important to understand when talking about the spirits of the dead, because we don't all have a responsibility to communicate all the things that we see and experience, nor do we have a responsibility to interact with all the spirits of the dead that might show up in our lives. If you are a medium, you have a different role. If you are not a medium and the spirit of a dead person is in your space, you can get them on up out of there, right? You didn't come here to help deliver their message to their, long lost cousin or whatever, that they still love them. Like, you might have to just send them off with love. That's cool. I don't think that's weird at all. Um, and very possible, because we're just talking about beings that used to have a body on this earth. So they're all, to me, the spirits of the dead are not reserved to like human beings. All animals, all beings that had a physical form on this earth, when that physical form dies, they are going to be connected to this earth in some way. So I would imagine that the spirit of a being that was a dog could have a message for somebody just as much as anybody else. And they probably need a medium to help pass that message on even more than someone who had a human form, because there might be even another layer of like language. I don't know, but that's really cool. Yeah. A different language, would have to be understood, which I think is really, really cool. Okay, so we want to contact spirits of the dead. We talked about why we would do that. We talked about what that might look like, and things of that nature. Graveyards, cemeteries. These are places where we can go to connect with the spirits of the dead, not because they stay there or live there, but simply because there's a huge energetic connection to that being there, which is their body, which is literally permeated into the soil in that space. And that can be useful to us. You don't have to have access to their personal effects or the dirt from their graveyard, but it's a very helpful way to specifically dial in who you want to speak with. Okay, so I have my grandfather's pipe. I have the dirt of a loved one or a stranger that I just really want to work with, whatever. What now, right? I have this person's ring. I have their t-shirt. I know their name. Now what? How do we call them in? Alan Kardec. Are you guys familiar with Alan Kardec? Drop an emoji if you know who that is. Oh wow. He's still with you. That's sweet. Yeah. All the stuffs, all the divination tools. Pendulum and playing cards. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, we've got some emojis. Some folks are familiar with Alan Kardec. So shout out to Alan Kardec. He is whatever. He's dead. But Alan Kardec was a French, I forget what realm of science he started out in, but he was a French scientist. And I think the story goes that he was a skeptic about spirit activity, and a skeptic about, you know, ghosts, people being still with us, all of that stuff. And in true, proper scientist fashion, he set out to prove, disprove, whatever, investigate this idea. And what ended up happening as he started applying systematic testing and running experiments is he actually got turned from a skeptic into a full-on believer. So he would run these experiments. You put people in a room, working with spirit boards, or all hands on a table, researching water vibrations, doing all of these different studies and all of this different stuff, to try to substantiate whether or not any of this was true. And if so, how could you contact the spirits of dead people? And so he went about it in a very empirical kind of way. And at some point in his life, he came to the Caribbean. Where he interacted with people who practiced the syncretized, diasporic African spiritualities like Santeria and things like that, and shared his scientific techniques and findings with people who were communicating with the dead already, but from a spiritualist perspective. And this is where we get spiritualism, or spiritism. They're not exactly the same, but for this conversation, the idea of communicating with spirits as like your primary form of magic, your primary form of spiritual work. And so you may have heard, in Latin cultures, espiritismo is the practice, and people who practice that are called espiritistas, espiritistos. And these are people who, using the African diasporic spiritualities from their culture mixed with the technical steps that Allan Kardec was able to kind of establish were effective, do spirit communication on a regular basis. So Allan Kardec has left behind a very helpful body of work in terms of the things that seem to not seem, because it definitely does work, but the things that will essentially call in the vibrations of the different beings that you want to talk with. So when you see altars and things set up with candles, glasses of water, burning incense, etc., these things are not accidental, and they're not just um, like copycats of stuff that people said to do. He was able to establish that these items, certain objects, certain practices, seem to be really effective at calling forward spirit activity. Okay. Um, so once you have like a physical item, oh boy, here she comes. Come on, come on, come on. Here she goes. You want to say hi? Say hi, everybody. It's Eartha Kitty. Say hi, Eartha. You want to say hi to the witches? She's hi. She says hi, guys. Um, so using his sort of structure of things, I have found that um, a candle and a glass of water are really the most effective things to calling forward spirit activity. Um, he did a whole bunch of tests and a whole bunch of experiments about what it is about the flame. There's language in the Bible about what the flame does and why the flame calls forward spirit activity. There are other scientists who have established the way in which water can retain memory. You can play different types of music around water and then test it, and the molecules of the water will actually take on different shapes based on the music that was played with it. And you can then go like reverse engineer and figure out what type of note was played by the water, by the molecule shape. It's phenomenal. So I don't approach magic from sort of like a feelings only perspective. My feelings, my sensations, my intuition, things like that matter. But for me, magic is very much a science that we don't understand and is very much in alignment with the things that we do understand about the natural world scientifically. We know that fire attracts energy, moth to a flame. We know that water holds energy and um, um, memory. Yes, Dr. Masuro Emoto has done like the most comprehensive studying of the ways in which water changes its nature based on what happens to it and how it will continue to go back to that formation even after that stimuli is no longer present. So it literally has memory. Water, every single drop of water on the surface of this earth has always been here. Just think about that for a second because that's crazy. Every single drop of water on the surface of this earth has always been here. It doesn't go anywhere. It evaporates up into the sky, it rains back down into the earth, it leaches out of the plants, and it just continues on this cycle. It has always, always been here. And so the memories that water holds are infinite. Um, so I don't know. That's kind of my theory that because water has always been here and holds the memories of everything that's ever happened, it serves as like the perfect vessel for almost like a snapshot of all of existence. I don't know. And then it holds on to anything that it experiences. So if a shift in energy happens around that water, it's going to hold on to it. So for me, it feels like the flame calls the spirit forward and the water holds it there long enough for you to talk to it or interact with it. I don't know this for sure. I have no way of actually like quantifying this. All I know is that in my own practice, anytime I've wanted to communicate with spirit, I have needed flame and water or a water based substance present. Um, that's always been the most effective for me. Um, the personal effect of that item is what helps to dial in specifically what energy I want to call forward and hold on to. But the flame and the water alone have always been enough for me to feel a shift in the space that I can recognize as something that wasn't there now being there. Okay. So I think that's all you need. If you have something connected to that individual, that's going to help you dial in more specifically to them. But beyond that, a glass of water and a candle gets it done for me. Okay. Yes, for sure. You know, everything we experience gets held in our body, and it's probably because of how much water is in our body. Yep. And that as well. Yep. Um, more ghost activity seems to happen around bodies of water. Yes, or in like limestone and stuff like that. Mm. You know, so this is the type of stuff that Alan Kardec was researching and trying to like put to paper and trying to quantify in a way that could satisfy the scientific community. But the espiritistas, who were not necessarily calling themselves that before his influence, were already doing it, you know, because they're like, we don't need you to codify it. We know that if we light this candle and we put this water out and we say this person's name enough times, like we gonna see some shit. But he wanted to try to quantify it. So his work is very helpful in that regard. And he has several prayers and things. So there are a few books out there, but there's this little guide, New Devotionary Spiritist collection of prayers that I have always found really helpful because it's got a whole bunch of different prayers that can be used. And again, the Christians don't own the word prayer. When we say prayer, we're just saying like a politely worded petition. So spells, incantations, whatever words make more sense to you, he called them prayers. But he's got wonderful collection of words to use when looking to make connection with spirits of different kinds. So, whether you are trying to contact someone who perhaps passed away in a tragic way or took their own life, or perhaps you are not even trying to call in the spirit of a dead person, you would like them to go away. He's got prayers for that as well. So, what you say is really personal to you, but I like using things that have been used repeatedly before because there's an energy that builds up. The more something is used, the stronger it becomes, the more alive it becomes. And these prayers have been used for decades now, by people specifically looking to make connection with the spirits of the dead, and who do it as a part of their spiritual practice and their callings in life. So these prayers have been said thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of times with success. So I like to use them. So this is a cute little book. We have these in the shop. They're $5, and it's a very handy little guide. They are very Christian in nature. He was French, so he's coming from like a Catholic, I think Catholic background. So there's a lot of reference to, oh God, oh Lord, the angels, etc., etc. Feel free to modify, I'm sure, if you want to. But I like it. It doesn't bother me to say those things because I don't. I'm not like anti uh, those religious messages, if that makes sense. Ma'am, please, please. Thank you. Cannot make bread right now. It's 1 in the morning. It is called the New Devotionary Spiritist Collection of Selected Prayers. And I will probably share in the coven the prayer on making a spirit go away from this book. I'm going to share another prayer on how to call them in from a different book, but I'm going to share the prayer on how to have a spirit goes away, how to have a spirit go away, from this. For those of you who are actually not interested in calling them in, you might have the spirit of a dead individual that will not get up out your space. So there's a handy prayer in there as well. And same thing, water, candle, call them forward. Listen, buddy. No gracias. You gotta go. Okay. Prayers for calling them in. There is a book that is from the early 90s, one of my throwback books, from Ted Andrews, called How to Meet and Work with Spirit Guides. And I was flipping through it the other day, and I had forgotten about this particular prayer in here. But this prayer is not from this author, it just is included in this book. The prayer is from a grimoire that is very popular, and that really forms the basis of a lot of like European occultism and ceremonial magic, and that's called the Greek Magical Papyrus. There's an invocation to the spirits of the dead in there that is handy. And it says, I place this charm down beside you. So the charm would be whatever item you are using to call in that person, the personal effect, the dirt, or if you don't have a charm, just their name. I place this charm down beside you, subterranean gods, Kore, Persephone, Ereshkigal, and Adonis, Hermes, the subterranean, Thoth, and the strong Anubis, who hold the keep of those in Hades, the gods of the underworld, and the demons. Those untimely carried off, men, women, youths, and maidens, year by year, month by month, day by day, hour by hour, I conjure you, all daemons associated here, to assist this daemon, and awaken at my command, whoever you may be, whether male or female. But take yourself to that place and that street and that house, and bring her hither, and bind her. So, a little important side note: when you hear daemon in this prayer. It is spelled Daemon, and it is not referring to like little devils of the Christian concept, but rather a daemon in this context is the spirit of a person or a god, which can help determine one's fate. It could apply to the person's own genius or to an individual god. But basically, what this prayer is doing is it's calling on the spirits of the what the Greeks would have called the underworld, and what now we would probably just call like the realm of the dead, to go and bring forward the person that we want to speak with. And the idea here is that there are what are sometimes called crossroads spirits or liminal spirits that stand in between this world and the next. And they do that for a good reason. They do that because the spirits of the dead can interact with the physical world because of their connection to it. And we don't necessarily just want that. It could be quite chaotic if the spirits of the dead could just interact with the living world the same way they did when they had bodies, right? We can't see them. And that could be very problematic to the living, and maybe problematic to them too. But for whatever reason, there is a category of higher beings whose role it is to keep the living and the dead in their respective places, unless somebody wants to interact across, in which case we go to those crossroad spirits or those liminal gods first and we say, can I please have permission to go and call somebody forward, go and talk to somebody on the other side? Or in that the case of that prayer, can you please go and retrieve that person, that spirit, for me to communicate with? um, so in almost every tradition that I'm familiar with, which is just a handful, it is customary to greet or request permission from these crossroad spirits before launching into your conversation with Barry the plumber. Okay. Um, so we do that first. I've always done it that way, and it's just never felt right for me to not do it that way, so I really can't tell you what would happen if you did not do that first, so you wanna try it out, I don't know. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I have always first addressed a crossroad spirit, or a liminal spirit that I have a relationship with, to either grant me passage and permission to call forward somebody, or to retrieve them and bring them forward for me. So, oh, great point, Ahmad. This is like a intermediate slash advanced practice, I would say. Ahmad says once you've practiced and become comfortable, you realize that there's water and fire and earth and air and everything in your body, if and when you don't have a candle and a glass, but you got to feel them. Very, very, very much the case. I definitely think that's an advanced practitioner ability to be able to feel the vibration of elements that you don't necessarily have like right in front of you. You are absolutely made of all of the elements. And we talk about this in the Magic Intensive, actually, in Elemental Alchemy. Um, uh, Practicing feeling the vibration of elements without actually having the element in front of you. It's not easy to do. It's something you have to work on. You got to work on your visualization skills, but you also have to work on your sensitivity to energy in the first place. but it definitely can be done. Definitely can be done. Nuri says we're mini Earths, and Heather adds, if I may add, Nuri, we are the universe in flesh. Y'all are getting real philosophical right now. Y'all get real deep. Y'all get real deep. Um, Hold on, let me see something real quick. Let me just make sure. I'm just turning off my downtime because I'm gonna be honest with y'all. Okay, no, I'll keep that to myself. Okay, I just want to make sure my phone was set right. Okay, let's see. So yes, greeting the crossroads and the liminal spirits, requesting permission for what you're about to do is just something that I have always done. It was how I was taught, so I never really attempted to do it in any other way. I feel like it only makes sense if you wanted to. Let's say you're a teenage boy and you want to talk to the teenage girl that lives at 55 Broadway, right? You're not going to just walk in her house. You're going to ring the bell and you're going to ask permission of the parents of the house, right? Can I go talk to your daughter, please? That's how I feel about interacting with other realms. Um, that if there are beings who are responsible for those realms or that stand at the entrance to those realms, it does not seem wise to try to navigate in those spaces without acknowledging them first, at the very least. And at the most, asking for permission and actually bringing an offering of some kind to petition them for the permission to do so. I tend to go about it that way. Um, and I think what what I have come to understand is, this might seem kind of complicated, but there are different realms within the realms of the dead. And so, depending on the type of dead person I want to talk to, there are different crossroads or liminal spirits that I address and ask permission for. In my practice, if I want to speak with the spirit of an ancestor, Papa Legba is the person that I request permission from. Um, if I wanted to speak with a different type of being in the underworld, it would be Hecate that I would go to and ask for assistance there. Um, I don't know if that's a universal thing. I don't think so. I think it's just, that's just something that has just developed in my practice. That's just what they have told me to do. So, who you address, who you understand as necessary to um, grant your passage into that realm, I think will be personal to each of you and your practices, your cultures, and the traditions that you're learning, as well as the nature of the person that or being that you are attempting to contact. Like Alexis, when you were talking about communicating with the spirit of animals and the dogs in particular. I've never tried it because I've never had a reason to, but I feel like if I wanted to call forward the spirit of a being that was once a dog, that I would call on Anubis or some other type of like dog spirit or dog image deity or something like that. I don't know. I've never tried it, but it's not the case for me that I always go to the same crossroads or liminal spirits when I want to establish connection with someone. it depends on who I'm trying to establish connection with and what type of being they are. Um, and this is also the case when going to graveyards and cemeteries. Um, Depending on the type of grave I'm going to visit and who it is I'm trying to contact, uh, the spirit that I would ask permission for entry into the graveyard and ask for the okay to go and take things out of the graveyard is different. Sometimes it's dependent on the graveyard. Sometimes it's about the location of the graveyard. But whether you're at home or you are going into a graveyard, I think it is a good idea to take a moment to ask yourself where you're going, who lives there, and who might be standing at the door. Just ask yourselves that and then act accordingly. And depending on who's standing at the door, it might be something as simple as acknowledging that they are there. Or it might be more complicated where they might be the type of spirit that requires some type of offering be given to them before they will kind of okay what you're about to do. The way you explain asking permission makes so much sense. Oh, thank you. Good. I'm glad. I'm glad. This it's not, you know, the stuff that I'm talking about. Yes, obviously I've done some studying and there's some like knowledge or whatever, but it's not like I'm like a professor of speaking with the dead. A significant chunk of what I'm sharing with you is just what I've learned from doing this for a while and what I've experienced. And because I'm a teacher and that's a part of what I'm here to do, um, I've given some thought to like how to explain it. So I'm doing the best that I can. So I'm glad that it's making some sense. So we have our tools. We've asked ourselves why. We've talked about the difference between being a medium and types of spirits that are out there, um, and how to petition them. Certain items, certain elements like fire and water seem to be incredibly effective. Personal effects of that being are very helpful. The dirt of their grave is also very powerful as it's just as connected to their energetic impression as an item of clothing or something that they owned would be. And then if we are asking them for something, or wanting to establish communication with them, how do we actually have the conversation? I think that's the next step. So now we've called them in, right? We've asked permission or acknowledged the spirits that stand in between this world and theirs. We've been given that okay. Now we have entered their world, aka gone into the graveyard, their home, whatever, or we have called them into ours. We've called them into our altar. We've called them to our sacred space. Wherever we are, however we've done it, now they're there. We're there. They're there. We feel that presence. How do we actually have a conversation with them? Uh, this is where, if you are not a medium, you are most likely going to need a tool. Mediums come here with the purpose of mediating conversation between the dead and the living. So they often do not need a tool because they've come here with a super hypersensitivity to being able to communicate with the spirits of the dead using their five physical senses or their clair senses. For the rest of us, this is where divination tools come very, very, very much in handy. Pendulums, cards, runes, rocks, dice, spirit boards, what have you. Any physical item that could be manipulated and then translated based on how it was manipulated is going to help you to communicate. a lot of Allan Kardec's work involved electricity. I think because he was alive during a time where electricity was a lot more new, so it was really fascinating, and it feel it's literal. You're able to see energy, so it to me seems like an obvious thing to do. So the lights on and off was a very is a very effective way to have communication. It's just like it's like Stranger Things. Like don't like don't nobody got time for that. Like I'm not stringing up a whole bunch of colorful lights trying to decode your Morse code. But anything that can be manipulated can be used to have a conversation, um, especially if you can establish a foundation for what means what. Does two flashes of light mean yes? Does one flash mean no? Da, da, da. Once you have a framework for what the manipulation of something means, you can use anything to have a conversation with them. But my point is that you're probably going to need something if you are not a medium, in order to help it be a clear and flowing conversation. So for me, I'm a card reader. I've always been drawn to cards, partially because of my own interest in them and partially because of the other spirits that I have with me. And so if I'm going to have a conversation with a spirit of the dead, I'm going to usually reach for a deck of cards first, unless I get indications from them that that's not going to work. We have to kind of speak the same language. So if I try to be like, hey, let's have this conversation in Chinese and they don't speak it, that's not going to work. Or let's say I want to have a conversation in Chinese, but I speak Cantonese and they speak Mandarin, we might get close, but not all the way there. So that happened to me with my ancestors. I read cards, but I read tarot cards. And that has been my primary divination tool for most of my practice. I got my first tarot deck 23 years ago. So that's always been my jam. And for a while, they let me rock with that. But I noticed whenever I tried to have a conversation with them through my tarot cards, I didn't have that same sense of certainty that I had with other things. And I was like, this is weird. And then, of course, I brought up a whole bunch of questions of like, can I not connect to my ancestors because I'm adopted? They were like, no, bitch, it's not because you're adopted. It's because we don't do tarot. We're African Americans. That's European. Go get some playing cards. So that's what I had to do. At first, I definitely thought it was like, oh no, I'm never gonna. And they were like, nah, girl, we'll talk to you. Um, so because my ancestors are primarily African American and tarot is very European, African Americans more typically used playing cards if they were going to use cards for divination. My ancestors are basically just like, you're speaking Cantonese and we speak Mandarin. So you're speaking like the same language ish. We do the card thing, but it's a different type of card. So I had to get playing cards in order to have conversations with them that were clear, and made 100% sense instead of like 75% sense. And I don't read that tool. I don't know playing cards well enough. So I have a little guidebook. So here I am, 20 something years into reading cards, and like day one, using a guidebook to understand the messages from them. So it's not about me. It's not about using the tool that I know best. It's about using the tool that is the language that they can speak. Um, so that rather than trying to force them to speak a different language, let them speak their language, and then I do the work of translating it, using whatever assistance I need. So as you connect with that spirit, you might have a go to divination tool that you start with, but pay attention to how that feels and whether or not it feels like a clear, flowing conversation. If it doesn't, it might be that a different type of tool would be better. And sometimes the cultural background or the spiritual background or religious background of the person that you're trying to connect with can help point you in the direction of what might be a better tool to use, right? So it's not like I was like immediately like, oh, I need to use playing cards. It was like something about this tarot thing is not working. I don't understand why this doesn't feel the way it does when I read tarot for everything else that I do. And it took me a little while to think about it and say, wait a minute, would my ancestors ever speak the language of tarot? No, they wouldn't. But the ancestors I'm connecting with are with my African American ancestors. So they probably also weren't like throwing bones and stuff. So what might they have used? What might have been their language? And I said, playing cards. And the minute I said that, one of my homegirls who is a tarot reader and sells vintage tarot cards um, was like, I thought about you when I got this tarot deck and or this playing card deck, and she had this beautiful bijou old U.S. Cincinnati deck of cards from like 1902 or something like that in the original box with like 2-cent stamps on it. Um, they would have originally been gilded, but all the gilding is gone. But they were from literally right around the time that my grandfather, the first ancestor to show himself to me, would have been born. So if he were playing cards as a teenager, he would have probably had a deck that was just like that. Um, so once it occurred to me, immediately I got the confirmation that, yep, you got it. You figured it out. We were trying to point you in the right direction. You got it. And then now I have this super old, very beautiful deck that I use just y'all will never see it. Because I use it just for talking to them. So so you'll figure that out, but start somewhere. Start with a tool, give yourself a tool to work with, and then see how it feels. Um, Spirit boards, I'll make a comment about the spirit board thing because spirit boards unfortunately get a bad rep. Okay. Um, oh wait, hold on, I'm missing messages. I feel like okay, yeah, oh good point. That as long as you're addressing that energy, the name or personification crosses cultural and spiritual boundaries. I can see that. I've used a lot of omen craft, using natural occurrences as a language without looking for them. It takes deciphering and sticking to what something means. Yeah, you have to kind of establish a good, what do you call that? Like when you have like a template or whatever. I don't think that's exactly the word, but a foundation for what something means and being consistent about it so it becomes very fluid. European, depending on the archetype are more ancient. Mm, um, so I there are a lot of there are some misconceptions about the history of tarot, I think, when it comes to how ancient tarot is or is not. Um, Before tarot cards, we had the playing card, and before the playing card, we had the die, and before the die, we had the domino, essentially a flat board with holes on it, as opposed to like a six cubed thing with holes in it. So certainly the concepts extend back, but the configuration of tarot, whether we're talking Marseille, Lenormand, Thoth, RWS, um, really do have a European construction, I think is the word that I'll use, that is significant enough, I feel, that it obscures things significantly. I think I'll stick with the analogy of Cantonese versus Mandarin, like the idea that both of these dialects have originated from a much older overarching language, but they are different enough now that someone who speaks Cantonese could really have a difficult time understanding someone who speaks Mandarin. And while something of a conversation can be had, a lot could be lost or misconstrued. There's enough distinction between the two dialects that a word in one could actually mean the complete opposite of a word in the other, so much so that it could totally throw off um, the meaning of a message. So I think that's why it was important for my ancestors to bring me to playing cards, because even though the origins of the tarot extend, or not the origins, but the concepts embodied by the tarot extend beyond European influence, there is enough difference between the tarot and the playing card that a message really could come through as the complete opposite. And that is what was happening to me and was causing me confusion. Um, yes, is are my thoughts on that. Same here, Ma, with omen craft. I've never really knew a name for it, but I like it. Omen craft. I like that. I like that phrase too. Divining as ancient terror has a history that is blurry. Yes, both of those statements absolutely true. Um, the language is universal. Yes, I can imagine so, yeah. Yeah, for me, it was less the figures on the cards and more the ways in which the 2 decks of cards kinda talk. It's a little hard to explain. Um, yeah, I would say, yeah, I would disagree. Just I don't feel that the language is universal. I would say it's like dialects, um, where the origin language is universal, but the specific messages by each one spoken differs enough from each other that trying to use one in place of the other could cause miscommunication for me. So there's an overarching language, but the dialect was off, basically. So I'm over here trying to talk Cantonese to people who speak Mandarin. It's like the best way I can describe it. So they brought me to what I needed to have messages with them that were more accurate. Um, because there's that overarching language, the messages were receiving were okay. It wasn't like they were like just gibberish. It was just like, wait, hold on, wait, I was following you, then wait, now I'm not sure. Huh? What? Right? And then when I switched to playing cards, it was like, oh, thanks, Grandma. I appreciate it. I'm gonna go to work now. I needed that answered. Thank you. I use playing cards to answer for why I think this will manage him first before using tarot and other tools. Yeah, I did it the opposite. I was using my tarot with them for a while, and what I felt from them was they let it rock for a while because they knew that's all I knew. And I had to learn a little bit more. Learn more about the history of tarot cards, learn that they came from playing cards, learn more about playing cards as divination, learn more about hoodoo and African American practices and forms of divination. And then they were like, okay, now you know enough. Can we stop doing the tarot thing so we can speak more clearly to you? You know, but at first, that was what I knew. So that rocked until I learned enough that they were like, you know, enough now. You don't know the playing card system, also because the playing card system is so regional and tarot is not as much. you don't know a playing card system, you're going to need to use a book or whatever, but you know enough now to understand the difference between the two, and we can start using this to communicate, is what how it happened for me. Are there guidebooks to assist with working with playing cards? Yes, there are. There are a couple of ones that I really enjoyed. My favorite is by Professor Charles Porterfield, who has a book called Deck of Spells, I think it's called. It's a yellow book with like playing cards on the front. I find that book really great. Professor Porterfield is a wonderful source of information on like North American folk magic and hoodoo. He's done a lot of compiling of like hoodoo rituals and information from the sources, traveling through primarily the South and things like that. And his book is really wonderful because it gives you a great history of playing cards, how we got tarot first from the playing card, and what came before that, and then the book goes into different methods of interpreting playing cards. And one of the things that I do find a little bit annoying, and why I'm probably never going to bother to like learn a system of playing cards the way I have with the RWS tarot, is because they're very regional. So he gives like 4 or 5 different regional breakdowns for what the 4 of diamonds means, what's the 2 of spades means, da, 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 da. And he has like the Kentucky region, the Carolinas, like New Orleans regions, and da da da, because they very much vary. But I find that book really good. There's also another one called 52 Devils that is that by Corey Hutchison? That one might be by Corey Hutchison. It's called 52 Devils. Another good resource, but I didn't like it as much. I think I like gave that one away. But Charles Porterfield's book I keep on my shelf. That one has been very, very helpful. Funny enough, though, I don't use Porterfield's book to translate the messages from my ancestors and that deck, because he has several systems and I don't know which one to choose. I'm like, do I pick the Kentucky? Do I pick the whatever? I use a book that is one of the first witchy books I ever got in my life. I have notes in it about my first boyfriend, Ben, when I was 14 years old, so 24 years ago. There's a book by Jillian Kemp on fortune telling and reading playing cards. And I got it at a Barnes and Noble, probably around the same time that I got like Teen Witch or whatever. And I liked it because it was purple and it was small, and I could put it in my purse and take it with me to church, which I could not do with my Teen Witch book because that's a pretty big book. And I would take it to church and write notes about my boyfriend and different things in it, instead of paying attention to the sermon. And that is the book that I use. There's a guide in that book of the playing cards. Um, I can't say that I recommend it because it's a very personal thing to me. I happen to have a deep tied to this book because of how long I've had it. It's the original part. It's all falling apart when I open it. I have to literally hold it together. It's come off the binding. Um, but there's something about me and my attachment to them, and the fact that it was in church with me for many years, and all of that stuff. It's got Bible passages and things in it when I had to pretend like I was taking notes on the sermon and stuff like that. Um, so it's very personal. So I use the definitions in that book. Are those definitions like useful for anybody else? I don't know. But that is the book that I use when I'm talking to them. But if you want to actually learn about playing cards objectively, Charles Porterfield's book is really good, and 52 Devils is another good one. Oh, great recommendation. Ahmad said, starting with playing cards, you can also learn numerology and the energy of the elements, because each of the suits relates to the elements. I think that's awesome. Another is Card of Destiny. A very European card system is a thought deck by Crowley. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not interested in the Thoth deck at all. Anytime I come across Crowley stuff, I'm always like, undeniable influence, obviously, as a Wiccan on my own religious practices. But He's kind of overrated in my opinion. Oh, about what? Oh, about the Thoth deck. Um, another a deck of cards that I really like. And Alexis can attest to this. I think Nuri's got a copy too. If you want to learn, I don't know if this is good for teaching you learning playing cards specifically, but if you want to work with playing cards and don't want to have to flip through a book so much, the Gypsy Witch flying playing cards or whatever, I love that deck. They're the playing card formation, 52 cards. Um, but there are explanations of what the cards mean. There are pictures, first of all, then explanations of what the cards mean, but then also information for what it means when certain cards are near each other or further away from each other. Love the Gypsy Witch deck. I don't use it to speak with my ancestors specifically, but I do use it specifically to speak with one of my guides that helps me with divination. So when I want to talk to her specifically, I use that deck and also a random Italian oracle deck called the Gypsy Oracle. They just kind of match each other. But the Gypsy Witch, love the Gypsy Witch deck, right? I think we all do in here. I know Alexis loves it. I think Alexis has it in Spanish, which is dope. But I highly recommend the Gypsy Witch deck if you need something that is playing card style, but kind of almost like an oracle deck or almost like a tarot deck. Um, Definitely check out the Gypsy Witch deck. They're also really small. Love reading with those. Um, and there's a deck by, I'm blanking on his last name. It's not J. Allen Cross. Um, Daniels, I think is the last name. The Conjure cards. They're published by Wiser and they're called Conjure cards. They come in like a wooden box, but they're playing cards, but they have images on them. I like those as well because the image that's on them is helpful. Because right, the image tells you a little bit of something about the energy of the card while you're also learning about the numerology and the elements, and then it comes with a little guidebook that is helpful. Yeah, same, same, same. Like when I want to speak to my particular guide that helps me with divination to like what's next, that's what I use that deck for. It's not one that I use every day. It stays at my prayer altar, really just for like those conversations with her about what's coming down the pipeline, what's gonna, unfold with this or that. What do I need to do next? Every once in a while, my guides will have me pull it out for somebody. That happened recently with one of you guys that came for a reading with me. And in very not typical fashion, Spirit was like, go get your gypsy cards for this. So I did that. But typically not for divination. Um, So I hope that helps, Heather. I hope those are some good recommendations for learning playing cards. But yeah, speak the language as best you can of the spirit that you're trying to communicate with. Choose divination tools that you are comfortable with to start, and or that you think would be helpful to start, and then let them point you in the direction of something different if something different is better. But that's what we would be doing. Good night, Nuri. Good night. We're almost done here too, because I think now that we've talked about actually communicating with the spirit, I think probably one of the next things to talk about, one of the last things to talk about is how to ask them to do things for you, right? Because you might want to contact spirit of a deceased being, just to have conversation. Perhaps there are some insights that you are looking for. But most often, we are calling forward the spirit of someone connected to the physical world because we need something in the physical world done. Sometimes it's just information. We need them to go and see something somewhere that we can't be, or bring a message from somewhere that otherwise could not get to us. But sometimes we are asking them to actually assist in the manipulation of this earthly plane in one way or another, to help make a situation go in your favor, or produce certain results, or bring you certain items, or whatever it is that you are asking for. So how do we do that? um First, we petition. We ask, you know for the request, um and then we pay for the request. We allow them to do what they got to do. We do what we need to do. And then when things come to be, we say thank you. That's a very like general outline for petitioning, I think, most beings. Um, your petition can come in many different forms. It might be a written petition. It might be something you speak. You might burn it and use the ash in a candle. You might bury it somewhere. You might put it in a something or what have you. At that point, we're getting into like the different types of spell work you might be drawn to, or the different types of traditions that you might be learning about, educated about, etc. There's so many different possibilities that to talk about them all will be here for many hours. So we're not going to do that. But we'll just say you will petition them in some way. In some way, you will clearly and respectfully communicate your request. Okay. So however you do that, you will do that. Celtic cross with tarot or the gypsy cards. That seems like a solid get it done, right? We make the petition, and I find it is effective to give some type of payment at first. Not the full shebang, but a little something, something. I sort of think of it as a deposit. And usually, what that looks like for me is creating some type of altar space for that spirit for the time that we are working together. That's usually what it is. Um, Perhaps it's some flowers or some crystals or a nice setup, or, what have you. With every spirit, it'll be something different, but usually creating a nice space to communicate with them and to honor them is my payment, um, for the request, my deposit, if you will, for the request. Full on offerings, I usually don't give until the results have been delivered. You don't get the remaining balance until we have reached the end of our deal, basically. But the altar space is basically preparation for that. And then when that happens, then there's a thank you that comes. Yes, great question. So when it's done, I used to be in the habit of saying thank you a little too soon, because I was coming from a Christian background where the idea that you are like subservient to spirits, and that you have to be like, oh, I beg you, please do this for me. Here, thank you. I honor you so much. That's not really how it works. The same way you would say thank you to another person after they completed the job that you paid them to do, um, is how you would approach it with them. Um, Remember that with each of these instances, you are building a relationship. So there are general tips, but it's always most important to pay attention to what you are being told by the spirit that you are working with. And I say that to say, I have spirits in my court who demand thank you immediately. These are not spirits of the dead, by the way. These are higher god, goddess type beings. So they are a little less inclined to do anything um, without the full shabam. And they also are very, these particular spirits of mine are very much like, once you say it, it is done. So just say thank you now and be done with the whole process. So I have had spirits literally, I'm talking about the moment I'm done asking for it, request, and even not so politely, the thank you, the offering right away. But for the most part, my experience with spirits of the dead is they are not so demanding. They don't really have a right to be. So they are understanding that they have been given a deposit, which is the honor, the thanks, the whatever the initial thing is that you present, and that thank you will be rendered when what you've asked for uh, is completed. And yes, some workings take time, so certainly give them time. Um, but there's no need to say thank you before the work is completed. What you want to do is pay attention for signs that things are shifting and things are working. Right. So we pay attention to the subtle ways in which spirit is communicating with us. Maybe there are certain animals we started seeing, or, a plant that was dead suddenly came back to life, or, whatever it is. Pay attention, be open, be looking, be waiting and feeling to see those evidences and signs that things are shifting in the direction of what you have requested. And so long as you continue to see those shifts and feel those shifts, then go ahead and continue to wait if you feel so inclined. But I don't think thank yous are necessary unless what has been requested has been delivered. So I wouldn't say that it stops the thank you, but just kind of think about like, if you hire a plumber to fix something in your kitchen that's leaking, and you pay him everything up front before the job is done, it's not that it's going to necessarily stop him from doing the job, but is he going to do as good of a job as he would if he knew he wasn't going to get paid unless it was perfect? You know what I'm saying? So these some of these questions really ask yourself how you would walk through the scenario with a person, because these are energies that just don't have bodies anymore. But a relationship with them is just like with anybody else. You want somebody to do something for you, you go to them with respect, you ask permission to do so, you bring a gift or some well wishes, you're clear about what you want, and you present the invoice, you let them know what's up or what have you, and payment will be rendered when you are done. And then you wait to see if they actually get the job done, and then you render payment. If you render payment before they have completed the job, you might not get the excellent job that you would have gotten if you had waited until they did it. We are not. We are not subservient to spirits. I think that's a really big distinction between this type of work and what you might be used to in religious context, where there are all of these beings that are placed above you. And in order to earn their favor, you have to, like, break yourself down in front of them, bow to them, beg them. You're not begging the spirits of the dead to do things for you. These are other human beings or other beings of this plane that just don't have bodies anymore. They did not elevate to some level that is above you. They're just capable of doing things that you can't do, like walking through walls. So if you need some shit done on the other side of somebody's wall that you can't get through, you might want to holler at one of the bodiless individuals that could go do that thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's all you're doing. You're building a relationship not to be subservient or worship these beings, but to utilize them. And then what you give them in exchange is an energetic boost by pouring energy into them, keeping their name alive, keeping their memory alive, giving them other energy sources to thrive from, like fire and water and air. They don't need food, they don't need clothing, they don't need money, but they do need energy, they need light. So that's what we give them in exchange for what they do for us. Will extinguishing the flame close the doorway open so that the connection is made when bringing the spirit forth? Well, extinguishing the flame. Oh, I see. When you're ready to stop the conversation, it can, but I would say that it is best to be clear about that. To be clear that, hey, great chat. This is over. I release you. Please leave this space now. And I am closing this pathway. I'm removing these items that were attracting you in the first place. I am putting out this flame. I am pouring out this water. I am shutting this down. Because I think you're asking more along the lines of like what to do when I want to end that connection. So it's not the case that just putting out the candle is going to like make them go away from your life, if that's what you're asking. It might, it's a good way to indicate the end of like a conversation, like the end of a session of talking to them or what have you. But if you wanted them to actually like leave your life, you would want to be more emphatic about that. You would want to dismantle everything that you had set up for them. You would want to release them back into the ether. And you really shouldn't have to set up any type of like protection against them. The only time you might have that issue is if you didn't deliver on your end of the deal, in which case, tough titties, that's kind of on you. Not advisable. Not advisable. Don't petition a spirit for something and then neglect to go through with your end of the bargain after they have delivered on their results. And I certainly wouldn't do that and then turn around and try to release them and move them out of your space and end the relationship with them. Because basically, we had an invoice, I did the job, and you didn't pay me. And now you want to like change your number and block me. How would you feel about that? How would you respond if you could walk through that person's walls? You'd go, fuck your cup, right? And now shit is flying off your shelves. You know what I'm saying? And you talking about, I need an exorcism. No, bitch, you need to pay them. Okay? You need to pay that spirit. That's what you need to do. So I would not do that. Let's remember it. Yeah. Yes. No one calls on them. Exactly. If no one calls on them, they become essentially nothing. The energy is still there, but as far as consciousness is concerned, who is there to be conscious of them? It's like the tree falling in the woods. Did it make a sound? If there's no one there to observe it, if there's no consciousness to observe it. So remembering them, speaking their names, honoring them, doing things for them is for us the equivalent of feeding us, giving us food, giving us nourishment, giving us money, shelter, clothing, all of that stuff. So that's what they want from us. And we can do that in a lot of different ways, right? At the shop and with Brother Moses and Cosmic, We are uh, thanking and honoring Black Herman by giving him a headstone to make it easier for his name to be remembered and for him not to fade into obscurity. For the spirit that you're working with, it might not be a headstone. It might be um, water. It might be coins. It might be your personal devotion. It might be coffee. It'll depend on the spirit, but whatever allows for their memory to be maintained is what they want. Thank you. Some of them are a little weird. Thank you very much. Yeah, hanging up the phone till the next call. Yeah, putting out the candle, is effective and things like that. Basically, whatever you did to open up the line of communication, you would just, you know, and you know what I mean? Thanking them, like I said, will depend on kind of the relationship with them and what you feel they're asking you for. Rendering payment, I think rendering thank yous should come after results have been delivered, to ensure that you get what you want. And then there's the releasing of the spirit, because once we are done with that, we might not want to have an ongoing relationship with this spirit. If it was an ancestor, we might want to, right? But if we had gone and gotten the graveyard dirt of our local hero because we needed to go to battle for something and we needed him to help us battle something, or we went and got the graveyard dirt of a judge, a very just judge, because we needed to petition that judge to help us with a legal matter or something like that. Once that's done, we might decide we no longer need to continue that relationship. And just like with a person, you want to do the same thing. Don't ghost them. You like my pun? Don't ghost them, okay? Don't just be like, thanks, deuces. I think it's appropriate to have like a formal farewell, you know, where you have one last conversation with them. You've given your offerings. You said, thank you very much. Appreciate you. Here's what you get. I'll give you some time to enjoy that. And now that we have finished that, I want to thank you so much. And I want to, allow you to go back off where you have been, and no longer, feel indebted to me in any way. And if you set up an altar for them, or blessed a charm in their name, or whatever it is that you did, you would just respectfully undo that, and end that relationship. And then that's about it. That's about it. You do not have to become the, devotee of every dead spirit that you petition for something. You shouldn't be the devotee of any of them. As Ahmad pointed out, they're not gods. We're not subservient to them. We work with them. Um, and depending on the nature of the situation, they work for you, essentially. So yeah, that's always the concern. Of course, we all have been impacted by, the modern societies and the major religions that have sowed a lot of fear when it comes to spirits in general. So we automatically start thinking about how do we avoid some negative consequence. But, aside from being a dick to the spirit, or calling on a spirit that is unpleasant in the first place, or that you don't know in the first place, you really don't have too much to be concerned about. One thing I did forget to go back to was the spirit board thing. Spirit boards get a bad rap. By spirit board, I mean Ouija boards and things of a similar nature. I can't think. Bye. Spirit boards get a bad rap because of the way that they are used. So people want to blame the spirit board. It's just another divination tool. The reason why people have had bad experiences with them is because they use them without any specificity for who they want to communicate with. So you have a tool that spirit can manipulate to have conversations. And then you sit down with your friends or whatever, and you light a bunch of candles and incense and start, like, I don't know, humming to each other or whatever you're going to do, and you make an inviting environment for spirit, but you set up no protections and you have no idea who you want to talk to, and you just start saying, "Spirits, come to me." Imagine if you opened up, here's another analogy. Imagine if you opened up your front door at your apartment right now in the hood that you live in, cooked a big ass meal, put some Hennessy bottles on the table, some music, and was just like, "Come on in, party at my house." Well, guess what? Yes, the cute little old lady across the street might come by and make herself a plate and respectfully sit in the corner, but also the crackhead on the block might come by with a few of his friends. Now, is that the Ouija board's fault? Is that your house's fault? Is that the party's fault? That's your fault. So we have blamed. I know, why was it Henny? I don't know. It was the vibe I was creating in my mind. That's the kind of party I was imagining. Um, but yeah, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get a mix of spirits. And yes, somebody's fuzzy nice grandma might come through and you might have a cute little experience, but also not might come through. And it might not be so cute. And it's not the board's fault. And it's not the case that every time you use a board, you're only gonna get negative or unpleasant spirit activity. It's just that people are using a very effective tool of communication with spirits, but not educating themselves on how to navigate that whole process in a way where they call forward specific spirits that they want to speak to. Or if they don't, if they, for whatever reason, don't have a specific spirit and they really are out here just being like, "I want to talk to spirits." Okay, fine, do you, no problem. But at least educate yourself on how to set up protective wards, how to call in your guides, to create some type of a barrier from harmful spirits. I mean, unless that's what you're trying to get into. But if you're not, and you just want to like see some shit move or talk to spirit randomly, like whoever comes through, okay, fine. But at the very least, set up some protections for yourself and make sure that your spirit team is on guard and that some basic protocol for how to keep the nastiest of the unbodied entities that are out there from, coming up in your living room, giggling like children and pretending to be things and stuff, you know. Exactly. Very big facts as well. So, like, maybe the cute little grandma comes through, but like you're over here calling whoever, she's definitely like, who all gonna be there? Okay. You invite me to a party like that, who all gonna be there? Oh, that's who's coming? I'm good. I'll see you at brunch in a couple weeks. You know what I'm saying? So you're opening up a portal of all kinds of spirit activity. Of course, the most thirst ones are going to jump in first, and that's going to create an environment that is not very pleasant. You're not probably not going to have a lot of sweet little old lady spirits coming through. You know what I'm saying? So, but it's not the board that makes that happen. Um, so yeah, I just had to speak in defense of the spirit board that gets the bad rep. It's always featured in the scary movies or whatever. It's not the spirit board. Ouija boards are super freaking useful, because sometimes you don't want to be interpreting tarot cards or dots on a dice. Maybe you would really like somebody to literally spell some shit out for me. Spell it out for me. Yes or no. Spell it out. Okay. And a spirit board is great. They will spell it out for you. Um, it's a very easy tool to read. So they're actually very useful, very dope. I don't use them just because um, I just haven't really had much of a need for it. And it does feel very general to me. I like to get people on the main line. Let me talk to you specifically. I don't really like the whole open the door type of approach to spirit communication. That's me personally. Yeah, so then after you have done your due, you can bid farewell, or perhaps there's an ongoing relationship that feels right. And then you go from there. But just always remember and keep in mind, you are not serving the spirits of the dead, you are not worshiping them. um don't let the ignorant Christians scare you. They're not demons just because they're not Jesus. There's whole worlds of energetic beings that are not demons. Demons are a very small part of the whole world of energetic beings. And they're a whole other bag of stuff. And they're not sitting in the corner of every room waiting for you to make a mistake so they can come along and like do demon shit. you know. Um, they are an energy of a vibration that is, darker, deeper, more connected to things that, as humans, we tend to judge as immoral or wrong or whatever. But they're not like waiting, sitting, trying to catch you up. You know what I mean? So um, don't be afraid. You got this. Remember that you are building a relationship for a reason. You're looking for results, and that if you go about that the same way you would with trying to have a genuine relationship with any other person that you were asking for something from, you're going to be just fine. Thank you, Heather. Have a great night. Thanks for staying up so late. Thank you, my love. So yeah, the two prayers that I talked about, the spiritist prayer for getting rid of the spirit of a dead person that is not pleasant, just so you guys have that in your bag, very useful to have around should you run into any issues, or have a situation already going on in your home or space that you want to clear up. And I'm also going to share the prayer from the Greek magical papyrus. That is a spell for evoking the spirit of the dead to come forward, asking the spirits of the liminal spirits, the underworld spirits, spirits of the dead, to basically go and retrieve the person that you would like to speak with. I'm going to put both of those separately in the spell section of the Coven feed. Okay. Any last minute questions before I head out? That's for the YouTube folks. I think we covered it all. Starting with the why, the most important part. Yes, definitely. There's a video. I feel like it's still on my YouTube. I might have taken it down because I ended up teaching it as a class for the Official Witches Sabbath, which is the Modern Witch Officials yearly like virtual conference. I might have taken it down. But I had a video on my YouTube for a while on a ritual called Drawing Down the Moon, which is a ritual that Wiccans and neo-pagans usually do around the full moon to call in the divine feminine energy represented by the moon into a glass of water that we then take into our bodies or bathe with or whatever to bring in that goddess energy into ourselves for whatever reason. And in that video at the beginning, I talk about the difference between evocation and invocation. So if it's still on my YouTube, you could definitely check that out because I start the video with that. But yeah, great point. That is a good topic. The difference between the two and how to do them both, the benefits of one versus the other, and all that good stuff. And The difference between invocation and possession, too, probably would make sense to talk about as a part of that conversation. So, yeah, good idea. Next month, oh, I can tell you, next month's high tea, we're going to have a special guest, my homegirl, Tasha Crawford from the UK. She is a devotee of Santa Muerte and Lilith. She has a very long, many years of experience working directly with spirits of the dead. So we are talking about those liminal goddesses, those crossroad spirits, the spirits that usher people from the living world into the dead, that stand in between the two, etc. That is essentially the nature of the energies that she works with primarily. And so she's going to actually join us. So we're going to have a guest in our next IT, and she is going to teach us a little bit about connecting with those types of energies if that is something that you feel called to or want to learn more about. I felt like I needed to bring in an expert on this one. Now that we've talked about the spirits of the dead and the crossroad spirits generally, now let's kind of dive deeper into these whole crossroad spirits, spirits of the dead, guardians, and talk a little bit more about them, what they're all about. They, unlike the spirits of a deceased person who you might interact with for a very transactional reason, if you start up a relationship with one of these liminal goddesses or crossroad spirits, that is probably going to be an ongoing thing. So she's going to talk to us all about that. All right. I think that's all, guys. Thank you all for being here. Have an absolutely amazing night. We have a full moon coming up on Tuesday, so enjoy that very, very much. And I will see you all in the next one.